I just want to deal with these riots issues, because you say you condemn it now. You didn't condemn it in your post. You even wrote sympathetically, Matt, about a woman who went to prison in the UK because, according to you, quote, she wrote something very offensive on Facebook and you objected to that. Can you tell us what she said?
Yeah.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to another fiery debate between Mehdi Hasan and Matthew Goodwin. Former academic colleagues say his views shifted sharply rightward. He stood as the Reform UK candidate in 2026. He finished in second place. He now advocates for a complete freeze on all immigration for 5 to 10 years. Listen to what his views on immigration from Islamic countries.
We need to dramatically lower, if not stop, migration into the UK from predominantly Islamic nations. Foreign nationals are about 3.5 times more likely than Brits to be arrested.
Matthew Goodwin, thank you for joining me on Head to Head tonight. You and I have known each other kind of indirectly online through conversations about over a decade now. But your views are very different, I would argue, to what they were when I knew you back in the UK here in 2011, 2012, 2013, when many would say you were a champion of diversity, multiculturalism, immigrants, Muslims. You were calling out the far right. Your critics now say, Matt, that you have become, quote, a part of the right populist movement you once sought to explain, that you've gone native with them, that, quote, instead of writing about the radical right, you've become part of it. So let me start tonight by asking, what happened to you?
Well, as somebody once said, when the facts change, I change my opinion. And over the last 15 years, I've become convinced that mass immigration is a failure, one of the biggest disasters in recent public policy. I think the elites in Western countries have fundamentally lost touch with the voters in those countries. And I think that unless we change course quickly, we're going to have some really big problems.
A lot of people sympathise with that view, of course. Although over the summer, we saw a very extreme, violent opposition to immigration. The UK saw horrific race riots, sparked by the murder of 3 young girls in the town of Southport. We saw mosques and asylum hotels attacked, police officers attacked, over 1,000 people arrested. In a post for your Substack, you called the people at those riots, quote, ordinary people who feel like they're losing their country and trying to, quote, exercise their voice. It sounded to a lot of your critics that you were justifying those riots, these horrific racist riots. We just had an election in this country in July. That's how you exercise your voice in a democracy, not via rioting when you don't get your way at the ballot box.
Well, protest has always been part of our political DNA, and obviously everybody would disassociate themselves from the criminality and the violence in the summer. I certainly wrote about it, I condemned it. But as Mark Easton and other liberal commentators at the time noted, there were also ordinary people protesting about what has been happening to their country. And that isn't just about mass migration, it's also about the breakdown of borders, it's about feeling unsafe in their own community, in their own country. And for people who engage in violence, they should have been rounded up and sent to prison, as many of them were. But there were lots of peaceful protesters at those events as well. And the polling afterwards, Mehdi, was quite revealing. Over 60% of Brits said, yes, I blame the people who engage in violence, but actually 63% said, I blame recent government immigration policy for these protests. And what I was trying to do in that piece is to say, look, there is clearly a lot more going on here than these idiots and morons who are trying to set fire to a hotel or attack a mosque. What we have in this country is a social fabric that is breaking down, and we need to talk about it.
A new Ipsos poll in April 2025 showed that many people in the UK are concerned about immigration levels. The survey included 1,100 British adults aged between 18 and 75, and 2/3 said that the total number of people entering the UK is too high. Immigrants usually move to another country by choice, often to find better jobs, education, or living conditions. Refugees, however, are forced to leave their countries because of war, conflict, or persecution. Many people believe that immigrants use the refugee's status to move to another country, hoping to live in a stable situation.
About it.
There was mixed polling. I mean, YouGov also found that the protests, even the protests, were only supported by 1 in 3 Britons, 34%. In fact, only 1 in 6 said that people causing unrest had legitimate concerns. It's interesting that you say you condemn the violence, but in your big Substack post on the riots, you only condemned the violence against the police. You did not condemn the violence against Muslims, Asians, the attack on a mosque in Southport. There was not one word from you about that, and you wrote a 2,000-word piece.
Well, I'm sure I did at the time, and I condemn it now. I think nobody in their right mind would say that was somehow excusable. But clearly, what was going on there was a bit like during the BLM protests in 2020. We had a national conversation about the legitimate injustices that underpin those protests. It did result in the injury of 30 police officers and lots of unrest in America, as you know better than me. Cities like Portland were largely devastated by protests and anarchism. But yet we still had this mature conversation about what is going on here.
But just to be clear, the Black Lives Matter protests were not like this. 90% of the protests in the US, according to one academic study, showed they were peaceful. There was no comparison. Even Priti Patel, not known as a kind of liberal, muesli-eating, sandal-wearing leftist, hardcore right-wing Home Secretary under the Conservatives, said there's a clear difference between that and then. She says what we saw during the pandemic protests, the BLM protests, was protest. This is a complete distinction. This is burning down of places of worship, thuggery, violence, rape.
Okay, but the issue is, for lots of people, what these events became was a proxy for this underlying issue that we've never in this country been able to get on top of, which is we promise the British people one thing, which is control and lower migration, and then we do another. Priti Patel's an interesting example. You say she's hard right. I'd say she's the most pro-immigration Home Secretary we've ever had in this country. Now, if you're a Conservative voter in Northern England, you were promised in 2019 lower migration, lower overall numbers, and a high-skilled policy. And then the government that you elected gives you the absolute opposite of that, puts everything on steroids and says to hell with you. You're going to be frustrated and you're going to be angry.
I just want to deal with these riots issues, because you say you condemn it now. You didn't condemn it in your post. You even wrote sympathetically, Matt, about a woman who went to prison in the UK because, according to you, quote, she wrote something very offensive on Facebook and you objected to that. Can you tell us what she said?
Yeah, she was a full-time carer for her husband, and she wrote something along the lines of they should blow up this mosque, and I think she said something hideous. People.
Yeah, blow the mosque up with the adults in
sure.
it. You don't think that merits a prison sentence?
If somebody writes something on social media in their own home, however offensive I might find it, I don't think they should go to prison. That's my personal
You don't think
view.
people can incite violence by social media? It doesn't matter whether she's in her home. She's inciting violence.
If it's clear incitement, they should be in prison. What I saw
blow the mosque up with adults in it.
She also
is that clear incitement?
The 53-year-old was sentenced to 15 months after, pleading guilty to sending communications, threatening death, or serious harm. Judge Stephen Everett said, "You should have looked at the news with horror, like right-minded people. Instead, you chose to take part in stirring up hatred. It was a truly terrible threat." The judge said no one had suggested Sweeney would have taken part in any violence, but so-called keyboard warriors like her have to learn to take responsibility for their inflammatory and disgusting language. Sweeney wiped away tears as she was jailed and said, "Thank you, Your Honor," before she was taken down.
Also very quickly deleted it. She expressed sorrow. I believe in Christian notions of forgiveness. If somebody says, "I'm sorry," I say, give you a second chance.
Do you know how many Muslims have gone to prison over the last 20 years for saying much less than that on social media?
Well, I can disagree with that. It's the same principle as non-crime hate incidents. I think what we're living through is an Orwellian imposition from above that I think lots of people in this country, the home of individual liberty, common law, Magna Carta, repel against. I'm one of them. I don't think we should be doing that.
Here's what really bothered a lot of people about your post, and actually really undermines, I would argue, one of the key arguments you make in your books. You say we should treat people as individuals. Don't become obsessed with group identities, ethnic identities, racial identities. And yet you wrote about the guy accused of murdering these 3 little girls, that he was the son of immigrants from Rwanda. Why is it relevant that the suspect is the British son of Rwandan immigrants?
He ultimately was a product of migration. He was a second-generation migrant. We know from a lot of research that cultural practices, traditions, values, different ways of life tend to pass down from first to second, third generation. We know he came from a very conflict-ridden society, Rwanda.
We have no idea what his motivation is. The police don't know. What do you know that they know?
Well, one of those potential motivations, let's see what happens.
But why didn't you wait to see what happens before you made a kind of slur against Rwandan immigrants?
Because the fact is, this ultimately was a symbol. I think.
How is it a symbol? It's got nothing to do with his parents, unless you have some evidence that the police don't have.
As I said in the original piece, for many Brits, what happened in the 12 days of that hot summer, we saw young British Muslim lads assaulting police officers in Manchester airport. We saw a young second-generation lad stabbing a British Army officer almost
What's that got to do with your description
because
of the
just hear me out. In the course of a week, we saw the Southend machete gangs, mass violence. We had the riots in Leeds. We had evidence of communalism in other parts of the country. We had sectarianism at the general election just a month before.
In your opinion?
With
These are not
independent,
facts. This is your opinion.
Well, for lots of Brits, when you put that together and you look at the course of those things, I think what 2024 will come back to be seen as was really a watershed moment in our debate over...
I understand, but you're avoiding the question, Matt.
No,
You are.
I'm coming to the central point,
well,
which
please, deal with the child of Rwandan immigrants. I want to nail this down.
Is Britain an integrated society? And do the people who are coming into Britain...
What evidence do you have? You seem to be implying all sorts of things
well,
about
I think it's,
we know nothing about.
Well, I think going out and doing a mass stabbing and going on a
mass stabbing is very British. Sorry to break it to you. A lot of British people do
Matthew has argued that being born in the UK or holding a British passport is not by itself enough to make someone genuinely British. It takes more than a piece of paper to make somebody British. Mehdi asks simple questions and he dodged every one of them. When he confronted by what he wrote, he takes it back and try to give broad statements without giving actual numbers. Matthew quickly associated the kid to Rwanda, yet he was born and raised in the UK and has never been to Rwanda. I don't understand how anyone try to debate Hasan when always bring the receipts. For more debate summaries, please like and subscribe for more.